fellow from Syracuse University and specifically alumni career services. If you didn't know that office existed, now you do. We work with a number of alumni career coaches. And so these are folks who do career and life coaching as their full-time job and their livelihood. And then we hope to work together on sessions like this. So here we are for Demystifying Career Pivots and Transitions. And our presenter is Corey Penn. So just a quick intro. She already put this in the chat, but she hails from Boston, but she works with folks in her career coaching business virtually across the whole country. So we like short intros, and I'm going to throw it right over to Corey.
Thanks, Jess, and hi, everybody. Just confirming you can see my screen? Yes, okay. Yeah. So hi, everybody. And for those of you that are on East Coast time, Central time, please feel free if you're eating or snacking, or even if you're somewhere else and you're doing the same thing, like don't feel this is a learning opportunity. I want you to be engaged, but feel free to do whatever you're comfortable with in terms of screen on, off, eating, snacking. It's all good. I'm really, really happy to be here and be with a bunch of SU alum. And we're going to spend the next, 30 minutes or so walking you through my story and my wisdom on change and career pivots. And then at the end, be happy to take some questions. So with that, I think you'll quickly get a sense of my style and how this is going to be a story for you. So you're probably wondering, like, who the heck is Corey Penn? Jess did a lovely introduction, but this is my story. So this is a picture of me a long time ago, in the early 1990s, sitting in a lecture hall in Newhouse. There was a class called Com 107. It was like an intro class. This is me in that class as a newbie freshman. And I graduated a few years later, in 96, from Newhouse with a degree in public relations. And so I think Jess mentioned I'm from Boston. I love the Boston area. If there's any Bostonians there here on this Zoom, hi to y'all. My best job is a mom of 2 teenagers. It's also the hardest job. And then the second best job is the job I have right now, which is an executive coach to senior leaders. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And one of the things I'm going to do in this talk is, because I've been through a lot of change, is I'm going to talk you through my change journey. And with that is a pretty extensive corporate career, which I'll take you through. Okay. So I'll talk about myself, because actually I think it's really important. You're all coming in at likely with different sentiments about change. And so I think it's important to share my journey. And then from there, the wisdom that I gained in the journey and what I use with clients now, sort of more framework based, to talk about change and transition. And then we'll do Q&A. So the first thing I want to do to take your temperature, to get us all engaged a bit with kind of where we're coming from, is I'd like to do something. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Slido. This is going to take a minute or two. So I'm going to switch us over here. If you go into, you can do it on your phone or on a browser, another browser, and just type in Slido, slido.com. And then at the top, you'll see a passcode, a place to put a passcode, and that's 3007043. You can see it on my screen. I just have 3 questions. And what it does is, I'll sort of display it in real time. And we'll see. Here we go. The first question: are you considering making a career pivot or job change? Okay, so I'm going to leave it here for about 10, 15 seconds, let everybody answer. And my hope is that this helps you get a sense of the community of people you're in. So it looks like a lot of us are considering making a change. Okay, feel free if you're still here. I'm going to move this to the next question, which you could probably see. So I want to check in on how you're thinking about sort of your readiness for this. I'm 100% ready, partially there, stuck, not really sure, not ready. So just be honest about where you're at. Kind of a mix of stuck, partially there. Nobody a few people 100% ready, perhaps. Okay, and then the last question I'm going to ask, if something is holding you back, what is it? And all of these things are very reasonable, by the way. We're going to talk about them. Yes. This is very helpful to me too, as I get a sense of where you're all coming in at. Okay. I'm going to move us back here. And so thank you for doing that. Thank you for playing with me. And that was important. That's an important start. So what you'll see as I walk through this talk, so I'm a reader and I'm a collector of wise words and quotes. And so you'll see that woven in throughout the talk. And this is one that is one of my favorites, and use it, interpret it however it feels right for you, which is nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So I think that's an important grounding start. Okay, change sentiment. This is another, before we get into my story, I just want to share a few things. And I like pictures. So when I work with mostly VP plus leaders, but I work with a wide array of people. And oftentimes people come to me and say, I want to make a change in my career. And some people come in with this perspective of like, it's terrifying, but also exciting. I'm not sure how to manage through it. And so sort of this roller coaster view. And others come in like, I'm ready to bungee jump. Let's do it. Like, I'm stepping off of a mountain and jumping forward. This feels great. But most people are here, which is a mix of everything. Like, I'm stuck. This feels great. I'm lost. I'm not really sure. And what I think is important that I want you all to know is there's no best, better, wrong, not so good, neutral. This is just where you all are at this current moment. And honoring that is really important in this process. Okay, my story. So you can see how, I guess, vulnerable I am open to being. And this is a picture of me. Didn't we all have t-shirts with our names on them and bowl haircuts from the early 1980s? And I think I love this picture for lots of reasons, but there's a lot of openness to the world, and we could sit here and analyze it for a long time, but I'm going to move us here, which is just a reflection on my corporate career. And I share this because these experiences at some companies here that you probably recognize was incredibly rich. And I had to go through each of these companies and roles and life cycles to get to where I am now. And I think the thing I want to share, and we're not going to go through each piece here, but the thing I want to share, and it's important to do this for each of us, is that there's some connective tissue in the journey here. Like the roles that I had were all like glue roles, project manager, I was a chief of staff for C-level executives most recently in my corporate career. It involved like relationships with people and navigating organizations. And then there were all kinds of other things in the ecosystems that I worked, like private equity and global e-commerce during a pandemic and all kinds of different technology stacks. And these were all really important in my journey. But this is kind of what launched me from that Com 107 class at Newhouse to where I am now, these experiences. So another picture, you sort of look at that, and some of you might think like, oh, that seems pretty impressive. Seems like what we'd expect. Like we're all trying to ascend and stair step forward. And that's the right path? And I agree. I'm really proud of my corporate experience, and I'm grateful for what I've learned. A lot of good learning, a terrific network that I've leveraged quite a bit in my coaching work, lots of friendships. But really, certainly for the last 5 to 10 years of my corporate career, this is me. This is how I experienced it. I was exhausted, burned out, disenchanted, deflated, and completely disconnected to what it was that I ultimately, where I've landed now. And so the thing that was important for me to recognize was there are all of these signals, and I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about this in our chat. There were a lot of these signals that were firing for years, like, this doesn't feel right. Is this what you really want? And I was sort of operating in a very robotic, like wash, rinse, repeat pattern that may feel familiar to some of you. And so I decided at a point a couple years before the pandemic that I was going to start paying attention to the signals that were firing as a way for me to learn about myself and launch forward. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to share these 3 very significant chapters of where I paid attention to this, what I call the breadcrumb trail. And the first was about 2018, 2019. I was a chief of staff for CEO of Staples. It was a big job. Learned a lot in that job. And what I took away from that stretch was I'm good at working with senior executives. I know how to translate back and forth. I can work in high pressure environments. But what I really love is being a trusted advisor and a sounding board and a confidant. There's something there that gives me energy. Everything else drains me. So like, what is that? And so I paid attention to that, and it helped me. It was the first time I thought about coaching. And so it helped me start to explore coaching. And I thought, I wasn't quite sure it was coaching, but I thought maybe I should just go work in HR or talent. Maybe that's what I want to do. And so COVID happened. And I think we were all slowing down at home, taking time to reflect. And during that time, I made a shift and I went and worked at Wayfair, a company I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And I became the chief of staff for the CTO of Wayfair, but it had a very big talent focus. So I started doing this and I was like, great, I've landed. And so the second breadcrumb came, I didn't land. The second breadcrumb came in my first year at Wayfair, where I was struck with this sort of vision of like, hey, I thought this is what I wanted. I'm a talent exec. I'm a chief of staff at this hyper growth company. At the time, I think it was a Fortune 150 company. I'm on a path to like executive land, but something felt off. Still wasn't right. And the breadcrumb signals started to get stronger, and I started to get wiser, and I think operate with more conviction. And I ultimately made a statement to myself that said, I don't want to be a corporate executive anymore. It's not what I want to do. And that took me 5 or 6 years, and it sort of built, and I made that decision. And I took my first sort of measured risk, which is I signed up for a executive coaching training class through like a coaching certification program. And it was a moment of like, you think of Oprah, where she's like, whatever she calls an aha moment. It was an aha moment. It was the people, the content, and I sort of knew I was in the right place. And so from there, so in 2022, still at the corporate job, and I knew that I wasn't ready to make a complete plunge, start something new, but I knew I was going to plan for it. So I took about a year, and I did 3 things in that year. I sort of one step at a time. I became a B player. What does this mean? I use this with my clients, and sometimes they don't understand. Like, what do you mean, Corey? I want to be an A player. So a B player is someone that operates with integrity, someone who does a really, really good job, but cares a little bit less, isn't volunteering for the extracurricular work, isn't overstretching themselves in service of their future. So they can spend time doing what I did, which is I completed a coaching certification training, like 200 hours of coursework and exams and all that. And then I readied myself to launch my coaching business. And about 10 months ago, almost to the day, I launched this website, coreypenn.com, and had a lot of great people working with me, close friends, experts in marketing and branding and websites that helped me build this thing. And I left my corporate job and I shifted my work into coaching, what I'm doing now. And what I'll say is that I have there's a lot of discomfort. I don't want to make this sound like it was a walk in the park, but I've never been more fulfilled or happy in life. It's all been very intentional. It's been like a slow, gradual shift for me, and now I'm here. So, and I'm happy to share that story. And now I want to tell you a little bit about some wisdom, some theory, some frameworks that I use with clients. I now work with 11, 12 clients. And along with my chief of staff work, I never like to say that I'm an expert on anything, because I'm not. But I think of most topics that I spend time on, this is one that I have probably the most experience and passion for, how to make a change in your work life. So let's talk through that. And I'll start by saying change is really hard. And I think in sort of doing that slide in the beginning, one of the things I was looking for was to learn about you and where you're at. And this is a list of sort of very, very compelling reasons why people don't or hesitate to make change. And I think the number one thing I see when I start to work with clients is predictable mediocrity, or perhaps even a not so good situation, is more comfortable than what we don't know, than new. So I'd rather stay here because I know it. And even if it's not good, I'm going to stay here. There are financial drivers. There are stage of life drivers. I have a few clients that have, and I talk openly with them about this, an inflated view, perhaps, of their impact. If they were to leave, the team would drown without them. Making a career change, a pivot, a huge transition, takes energy. It takes resilience. It takes lots of different things, and that can be tiring. And so that's another reason that people tend to hold back on change. And this is a big one, cultural wiring. Whether we're talking about US culture or other cultures, most of us have been acculturated to believe that upward mobility, that financial success equals life success. And so there's a lot of unwiring, or really challenging of that premise that happens in this process. And then in coaching, we use a term called saboteur narratives. And saboteur narratives are that sort of inner critic voice that says, like, don't be selfish. You have a great situation. Just stay where you are. And in service to us, like protecting us from anything uncomfortable. And so that's woven in here quite a bit. The first thing I want to say to all of you as it relates to change is, and this is like the transformational life change. And in reality, what I've experienced and what I see is that it's actually a gradual stair-step approach. One step, and then the next step, and the next step. And the framework that I like to use with clients, and I use this myself, is good, better, best. And so if you're someone that's in a role that isn't challenging, or you're unhappy, I might ask you, like, what's the next good version? And then from there, like for me in my story, it was going from being a chief of staff for a CEO to working on more of a talent focused role at a hypergrowth company. And then that was good. And better is being an executive coach. And best is like to be discovered. I'm working on that. I don't know what that is yet. So good, better, best is a way to think about demystifying, making it smaller. Doesn't have to be a huge change. Yeah, and you can all do it 100%. You can all do it. And so this one here, so I work with clients who have landed in like the biggest role of their lives and they're overwhelmed. But I mostly work with people who come to me with this focus, this statement. I want to make a change. I'm not sure what it is, how to do it, when to do it. And one thing philosophically that I believe in, sort of how I've been trained in coaching, is that we all know what we want. We all know it. Oftentimes it's buried or it's scrambled up, and putting the time into unpacking that, making sense of it, whether that is like journaling, whether that's using coaching, whether that's talking more openly with close friends and mentors to really start to unpack. Because we tend to stop. We make that statement, I want to make a change. I don't really know what, how, and then we stop because the work is really hard to figure it out. So I'm going to take you through now 3 frameworks, 3 really, I think, robust pieces of wisdom that I use with clients that I've learned myself. One of my favorite quotes of all time, fear tricks us into living a boring life. This was me for many years in my corporate career, just kind of robotically going through the motions. And so I'm going to start with this one. So I've talked about this in my change journey about picking up the signals. The signals can be really positive and the signals can be telling. So examples of this could be when you work on a project or deliver a presentation or do something in your work life that feels, you lose track of time, that feels great. You're getting your intuition, your gut is sending a signal that felt great. I love that. I want you to pay attention to those signals. And I also want you to pay attention to signals like, for me, that I received, like, I hate high pressure situations all the time. That's all I do. Why am I doing this? And I say, and what I would say to that signal is like, oh, I should be good at this. I got to get better at it. And so really paying attention to those signals, and they're going to keep coming. And they're going to be, some are going to be quiet, and they're going to get louder, but really tune up your radar so you can catch these signals. This is a lot of what I do with my clients. Second, life design. This is probably my favorite one. So I'll explain it. So the number one, the most popular course at Stanford University is a class called Life Design. The professor is a guy named David Evans, and he wrote a book called literally Design Your Life. So it's a good book if anyone's looking for an interesting read. But the concept is that particularly in the US, we launch ourselves into careers at a very early age as we're still trying to get to know ourselves. And we sort of design our life inside of work. So first you do work, and then everything else kind of fits in if it can. And so this circle, everything here in white is work. And then for some people, it's like, well, a little bit of family and friends, a little bit of fun, but it's for a lot of us, it's very out of balance. And another thing that happens when we're misaligned with life design is that, this happened to me, is that our work focus is disconnected to who we are and what conditions are important for us to thrive. So I'm someone in my coaching work now, it's calm, I'm deeply connected. These are things that are really important to me. I'm deeply connected to the people I'm working with. It allows me to live like a very intentional life. The work that my corporate career brought to me, again, I'm grateful for it. I had to learn through it, was like high pressure, 50, 60-hour work weeks, unpredictable. And so both things can be true. And when, and this is actually my life design. If I were to, and I just drew this out, but what I push people to think about and what I learned myself is like, we have complete agency as educated, talented, resourceful humans to own the decisions we make and structure life here and the things in it that are important to us. You can see work has doesn't take up the whole pie, the circle here. And so these are things that are important to me. When I thought about getting into coaching, one of the things that drew me to it was I travel 6 to 8 weeks a year for fun. I'm big on wellness, so I want to exercise. I have wonderful family and friends. Like all of these things are really important, and work fits into that. And this isn't a sort of make-believe land either. Like there are practical considerations. If I could choose to work anywhere, it would probably be like in an independent bookstore, but it probably for now doesn't help me hit some of the financial goals that we've set as a family. So it's important when you do life design to think about like compensation and things that challenge you and give you what I call conditions to thrive, to be the best version of yourselves. So life design is something that I think is really important. It doesn't have to be theoretical or very formal, but thinking about how do you want your days and your weeks and your years to be structured, and where does work fit in? It's a good question to ask yourself. And then the last nugget I'm going to share is called the S curve, like the letter S. And its original application was with consumer products. And so a product enters the market, it catches fire, it peaks, market conditions change, it starts to decline, and ultimately it sort of sunsets. Think about like Blockbuster. If anyone, and there might be people that don't know what Blockbuster is, but I'm guessing most of you do. So you can apply the S curve to your career, and we can look at it in your career in totality, or we can look at it from the perspective of like the current role that you're in. Think about it this way. And I'm guessing you've all been in this place, which is you start a new job, you don't know much. You feel like you're figuring things out, you're not adding value yet. And then suddenly something clicks. You start to get some wins. You're working your way up the S. You're really thriving. And then you sort of hit this point, and I'm going to sort of, you hit this point as you get to the top of the S. And this is really important recognition. I see this a lot with my clients. And so I'll talk you through each piece. So if you're here, and it doesn't have a lot to do with tenure, it can, but if you are feeling like you're growing and you're learning and everything is aligned, this is a great place to be, sort of the growth zone on the S. What happens at the top of the S is things start to stagnate, almost flatline. Your energy dims, your enthusiasm for the work. Sometimes you start to get a little cynical and negative, and I call it like meh or malaise. There's just a lack of enthusiasm. And so what I encourage people to think about is plot where you are on this S curve. And if you're here, if you're at just before the S starts to turn, this is a great signal. This is a signal of saying, what's next? This is an opportunity to be proactive. This is an opportunity to think about either at your current company, or if you're thinking about a shift. This is a good way to think about sort of evaluating where you are. And then I have just a few more things I want to share. And I'm so happy, by the way, to talk with you all as a group for the time that we have left after this about any questions you have, or to go into any of this in more detail. But we sort of step back for a minute, and I shared my journey. I shared some wisdom with you around listening to your intuition, about understanding how work fits into life, making sure that you have that sequence appropriately set. And then the third thing, yes curve. And so let's just say you have all that figured out, or you're going to work towards that. Then what's next? Because there's sort of the second big piece to this. And if there's anyone in sales, I think I saw a few in the chat. This might resonate with you, but I like to refer to this as your go-to-market strategy. Like, how do you build your, now I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make a tweak. Maybe I'm a director of marketing at company one, and I want to go be a director of marketing in a different industry. So the first thing that I require of clients, and we sort of work together, is once we've worked to a point where we understand, let's use that marketing example. I want to be a director of marketing. I actually have my clients write a very brief requirements document, a set of must-have, and in some cases nice to have requirements. This is an actual client of mine who wrote this maybe 6 months ago, responding to just 2 questions. I'm hoping that you'll find like strength in reading out these questions. The first one is, I will find a blank that meets the following. For this client, it was a long-term consulting opportunity. And in that, she detailed out like compensation, work schedule, hybrid versus remote, industry, company size. And what's happening in creating this requirements doc is this job search, career transition, pivot, whatever you want to call it, can be very emotional. It can be very knee-jerky. Someone sends you a LinkedIn job description or something, and having a structured, thoughtful requirements doc like this is like very factual. It's evidence-based. It's what you desire. And so it's a good way to bounce off opportunities and help you to really get more precise about who you want to talk to and what you want to talk about. So the 2 questions I have clients answer, the first one is, I will find a blank that meets the following. And the second is, this is really important, in order to find this, I will remove these limiting beliefs from my mindset. These are the saboteurs that I talked about when we were talking about the things that create change resistance. So this person wrote things like, I've peaked and will need to lower my expectations from here on out. I've lost my mojo. She's a parent. I will struggle to juggle career and parenting. So this is a way to put that out there. These things don't necessarily go away, but you sort of see them and face them and power through them. So the requirements doc is something that I recommend and you can call it whatever you want, but really being mindful and prescriptive about what's important to you. The most important thing I want you to leave today with, the most important, is networking is so essential in this job market, particularly for mid-level and above sort of stage career people. There's a metric that I learned in my chief of staff work, and this is a pretty accurate metric. Something like 80% of roles are not posted. The common use case here would be, in my corporate life, I would be in a meeting right about now, talking about 2024 budget. And we would say, oh, we're going to start this new thing, this new program, this new initiative, this new business unit. And we're going to hire a head of marketing. We're going to hire someone that's going to run this and that. And a few weeks from now, I sit down and have coffee with like a old friend who's a marketing VP and says to me like, hey, I'm starting to think about something new. And I say, oh, we're going to have this role. You should come talk to so-and-so and so-and-so. So I cannot emphasize the importance of investing in networking, in having the right approach, ask for what you want, I oftentimes use a metaphor of like when you go to a restaurant, the person that's taking your order doesn't know what you want until you tell them. So something along the lines of, I am looking for wisdom, and I'm looking for ideas of people in your network that could help me as I explore these types of roles. So it's really, really important to do that. The last thing I'm going to leave you with before I take questions. So some of you may have heard of Mary Oliver. She's like one of the most famous poets, I think, of all time. And I discovered this quote during the pandemic, and I'm going to share it with you because I think it's very meaningful. And time is our most precious resource. So it's, tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. And I thought that that would be a good way for you to, I think, for me to put a bow around this talk. And I hope that you find it to be meaningful as well. And for now, I'm happy to, Jess, you tell me the best way to do this, but I'm happy to, first of all, I'll say this. Anyone in the SU community, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is very easy to remember, I think, Corey@coreypenn.com, or my website's just coreypenn.com. It has my contact info, or on LinkedIn. But I'd be happy to chat with anyone in this group about anything I can do to help you.